All right, so today we're diving into TURFU.
TURFU.
They got TURFU. So you know when you hear a name and you're like, what is that?
Uh-huh.
That's kind of TURFU in a nutshell. But it's not just a catchy name. It's this whole movement trying to like reinvent the future and how we do things.
Yeah, and they're not messing around either. It's like they're trying to rethink how we do like everything, from how we work together and share what we know to like the big problems in the world and how to fix them.
Totally.
Yeah.
And we've got all these documents here that are super interesting, but also kind of confusing. By the end of this deep dive, we're going to try to figure out if TURFU is like actually going to happen or if it's just a really cool idea.
Yeah, it's definitely ambitious. Like the whole thing is mind-blowing. They're not just saying, here's a solution. They're like creating a whole new way of thinking about things.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. The sources keep using words like metastructure and paradigm shift. What does that even mean when we're talking about TURFU?
Well, it's about moving past the limits of like the way things work now, you know? Like think about it. We're trying to solve these really complicated modern problems, but we're using systems that were like created ages ago. TURFU is saying that to really change things, we need to fundamentally change how we organize ourselves as a society.
So it's not enough to just like tweak the system a little. We need to like start over.
Exactly. And they're not just talking about it. They're actually building tools to make this like decentralized future actually happen. And one of their big ideas is something called stigmergic coordination.
Okay, I got to be honest. That one went right over my head. What is that?
Okay, so imagine like an ant colony. Right? Each ant is just doing its own thing, following simple rules, but somehow they all work together to build these crazy complex structures. That's stigmergy, it's decentralized, and it organizes itself.
So TURFU is saying that if we design the right systems, then people can collaborate on a huge scale without someone telling them what to do.
Exactly. Like think Wikipedia, but for everything. And this could work for like creating new technology or tackling things like climate change.
Wow, that's a bold idea.
Yeah.
And to make this happen, they have this thing called the OZAM incubator. What's that all about?
So basically, it's a place where they help projects that fit with TURFU's vision get started. It's kind of like being a venture capitalist, but instead of just trying to make money, they're looking for projects that could have a big positive impact.
And how do they pay for all of this? Is there like a secret TURFU bank account we don't know about?
Yeah. Haha. No. They talk about using crowdfunding where anyone can chip in. And also ICOs, which are kind of like crowdfunding, but with cryptocurrency.
Interesting. So they're using decentralized money to build a decentralized future.
Exactly. They're practicing what they preach. But it's not just about money and technology, right? The sources also talk about something deeper. They say that TURFU could change not just the world, but also how we see ourselves.
Now that's getting really interesting. But before we get into all of that, let's look at how TURFU wants to solve some of the problems we have right now. There's this one document you shared about changing the way we do scientific research that really caught my attention.
Yes, that's a really good example of how TURFU wants to create real solutions, not just theories.
So tell me more. How would a decentralized system actually change the world of science?
Well, imagine if all scientific knowledge was free for anyone to access. No more expensive journals hiding information.
As someone who once spent way too much time trying to read just one research paper, that sounds amazing. But how would that actually work?
They want to make these decentralized data repositories. So instead of research being scattered everywhere, it would all be in one global database that's open to everyone.
Okay, that sounds like a huge project. And that's where blockchain comes in, right?
You got it. Blockchain tech would make these data repositories super secure and transparent. Every piece of information would have a timestamp and it would be impossible to change. So no more worries about people messing with data or censoring it.
So it's like a giant library of knowledge that nobody can mess with and that anyone can access.
Well,
that's amazing. But what about peer review? How do you make sure the research is good in a decentralized system?
that's another area where TURFU gets really cool. They want to use something called tokenized peer review. So experts who take the time to read and evaluate research would be rewarded with tokens.
Wait, so you're saying you could actually get paid to read research papers? That's actually a great idea. It would encourage the smartest people to participate and could make the whole research process much faster.
Exactly. And because everything is on a transparent blockchain, you can see the whole process from when someone submits a paper to when it's published. And that helps to build trust in the system.
I'm starting to see why this is so appealing. But this is like totally changing how we've been doing things for centuries. Is that even possible?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It would be huge, definitely. But the thing is, the current system is slow, and it doesn't really work that well. And a lot of times, smart people can't even participate because they can't afford it or don't have access. TURFU wants to get rid of those barriers so we can discover new things.
Right. Okay. I see how TURFU could really change things for the better. But science is just one part of it, right? What about all the other big problems in the world? How does TURFU deal with those?
That's a really important point. TURFU isn't just about coming up with random solutions. It's about getting to the root of the problem. And a lot of the time, our problems come from outdated ways of thinking and doing things.
So it's like they're not just trying to build a better car, they're questioning whether we even need cars at all.
Yeah, exactly. Take climate change, for example. TURFU says that the way we do things now, prioritizing money over people on the planet, just isn't going to work. We need global cooperation on a scale we've never seen before.
So they think decentralization can cut through all the BS and let people work together towards a common goal.
Exactly. And it's not just about the environment either. They say TURFU can be used to fight poverty, improve education and healthcare, and even address things like political corruption and social injustice.
Wow, they're not afraid of a challenge, are they? But realistically, these are huge, complex issues with no easy answers. How do they plan on convincing people that this radical vision is the way to go? It all seems a bit utopian, don't you think?
That's the challenge, isn't it? How do you take a really cool idea and make it real? And to do that, they need more than just technology and good ideas. They need to inspire people to believe in this idea of a decentralized future.
And is that where the whole philosophical side of TURFU comes in? We were talking about that earlier, how it's not just about changing the world, it's about changing how we think about ourselves and our place in it all.
Exactly. It's not enough to just replace old systems with new ones. TURFU knows that real change means changing how we think about things, rethinking our values and what really matters.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. But give me something concrete. What kind of philosophical ideas are we talking about here?
Well, one of the main things they talk about is how important free information is. Everyone should be able to learn and access knowledge. Remember those decentralized data repositories. It's not just about science. It's about giving people the power to think for themselves, question things, and help shape the future.
So it's about making knowledge accessible to everyone so we can all make better decisions.
Right. And another key idea is that decentralization is actually how nature works. Like, look at ecosystems. They're complex and resilient because everything is connected and each part has some freedom.
So instead of forcing order from the top down, they're looking at nature for models of organization that are more adaptable and organic.
Yeah, you got it. And this connects to their whole thing about empowering people through technology. They don't see tech as something that controls us, but as a tool to connect with each other, make our voices heard, and contribute more.
It's like they're taking the original idea of the internet, this decentralized network, connecting people all over the world and applying it to everything.
That's a great way to put it. But it's not all perfect, right? There are some big questions that TURFU brings up about progress technology and even the future of like what it means to be human.
Now you're speaking my language. This is where things get really interesting, where we stop just talking about ideas and start thinking about what they actually mean in the real world.
And the implications are huge. We've talked about how TURFU could revolutionize science, solve global problems, and create a fairer world. But what happens if they actually pull it off?
You mean, isn't that the whole point?
Sure, but every system, even the good ones, can have unintended consequences. And with something as big as TURFU, those consequences could be massive.
Okay, now you're just being mysterious. Give me an example. What kind of unintended consequences?
Well, for one, think about the idea of truth in a decentralized world. If anyone can contribute information, how do we know what's true and what's not? Who gets to decide?
That's a really good point. We're already dealing with that online with all the fake news and echo chambers. Decentralization could make those problems even worse if we're not careful.
Exactly. And then there's the question of who's in charge. If there's no central authority who makes the rules, how do you make sure a decentralized system doesn't descend into chaos or get taken advantage of by bad actors?
Those are all important things to think about. Seems like there's this inherent tension in TURFU's vision between individual freedom and collective responsibility.
Absolutely. And that tension is definitely there in their own discussions. The sources we looked at showed a really fascinating mix of viewpoints within TURFU itself.
Oh, really?
Tell me more about that.
Well, some people in TURFU are like totally gung-ho about technology. They think getting rid of central control will solve everything. But others are a little more like, let's think about this. They say we need ethics and rules to keep things from going sideways.
So it's not like everyone agrees. It's more like a bunch of different people trying to figure out what a decentralized future should actually look like.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's what makes it so interesting. It's like a microcosm of this bigger conversation that's happening everywhere about what role technology should play in our lives, how we should govern ourselves, and what progress even means.
Yeah, it's like they created a space to try out all these big ideas and see what actually happens. Exactly. And that kind of brings us back to that whole metaphysical side of TURFU we were talking about before. It's not just about changing how things work on the outside. It's about how we see ourselves in a world that we're changing so fast.
Okay, yeah, I've been really curious about this whole metaphysical thing.
Mhm.
It feels like we've gone from talking about science and blockchain to like something completely different. How does that all fit together?
Well, it all comes down to consciousness.
Yeah.
TURFU says that as we create these super powerful technologies like AI, biotech stuff we haven't even thought of yet, we have to think about what they mean, not just for the world around us, but also for our inner world, for what it means to be human.
So it's not enough to just build cool things. We also have to think about how those things will change who we are, how we think, how we connect with each other, even how we find meaning in life.
Right. Exactly. And that's where this idea of a decentralized future starts to get really deep. What happens if TURFU actually works? If we get rid of the old power structures and ways of knowing what happens to things like spirituality, religion, even the nature of consciousness itself?
Whoa, those are some big questions. I gotta admit, I'm a little lost here. What would a decentralized approach to something like spirituality even look like? I can't even picture it.
To be honest, I don't think there's one right answer to that. And I think the TURFU folks would say that's the whole point. They're providing the tools, the framework, the philosophy. Now it's up to all of us to explore and experiment and figure out what a decentralized future for the human spirit could be.
So it's less about following a map and more about creating a space where new things can happen, where we can discover something unexpected.
Exactly. It's about empowering individuals and communities to find their own answers, to create new ways of finding meaning in a world that's always changing.
Wow, that's a pretty wild idea. And it kind of changes how we see TURFU as a whole. It's not just about fixing problems or creating a perfect world. It's about embracing the unknown, about trusting in our collective wisdom and creativity.
It's a journey, for sure. And like any good journey, the discoveries we make along the way are just as important as the destination.
Well said. So to wrap things up for you, dear listener, as you learn more about TURFU, here's something to think about. What if the most important change that a decentralized future brings isn't about the world out there, but about how we understand ourselves and our place in it all? What if TURFU is really just an invitation to go on a journey of self-discovery together?
Now that's a journey worth taking, even if we don't know exactly where we're going.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, happy diving.